The champagne tasted better than usual. Maybe it was the vintage, or maybe it was watching my parents' faces turn progressively redder as they realized where my sister Melissa had chosen to hold her wedding reception. The Grand Meridian wasn't just any hotel. It was the most exclusive property in the city, with room rates starting at $800 per night and a waiting list for events that stretched 18 months. "This is absolutely ridiculous," my mother hissed across the lobby, her voice cutting through the gentle piano music floating from the lounge. She was dressed in an expensive cream suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her blonde hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. The picture of old money elegance. Except we didn't have old money. We had my father's moderately successful dental practice and my mother's real estate license that she'd never actually used. "Melissa, darling, are you sure you can afford this? The deposit alone must be." "We can afford it, Mother," Melissa said tightly, smoothing down her engagement cocktail dress. This was the pre-wedding family meet and greet, scheduled for the evening before tomorrow's ceremony. "Brandon's family is helping." "Of course they are." My father adjusted his tie, looking around the lobby with poorly concealed envy. Dr. Richard Williams had always wanted to be the kind of man who stayed at places like the Grand Meridian but had never quite managed it. At least someone in this family married well. I took another sip of my champagne, saying nothing. I was sitting in one of the lobby's plush armchairs, already checked into my room, watching the family drama unfold with detached amusement. "Oh, there she is," my mother said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Just sitting there like she belongs here. Emily, shouldn't you be at work? I thought coffee shops kept late hours." "I took time off for the wedding," I said calmly. "How generous of them to give the part-time barista a few days off," my father added. He walked over to where I was sitting, looking down at me with that expression I'd seen my entire life. Disappointment mixed with contempt. "I hope you're not expecting us to pay for your room here, Emily. Your mother and I are already stretched thin helping with wedding costs." That was interesting, considering Melissa had just said Brandon's family was paying for everything. But I didn't point that out. "I have my own room, Dad. Don't worry about it." "Your own room?" My mother laughed, a sharp sound. "Emily, a standard room here costs more than you make in a week. Did you put it on a credit card? Because we are not bailing you out again when you can't make the payments." "I haven't asked you for money since I was 19, Mom." "Yes. When you dropped out of that perfectly good business program at State to pursue your little creative writing fantasy," my father said. "Worst investment we ever made. $20,000 in tuition down the drain." Melissa shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we should go see the ballroom. The coordinator said she'd give us a tour at 7. "In a minute, sweetheart." My mother was still focused on me like a hawk that had spotted wounded prey. "I just want to make sure your sister understands the value of money. Emily, you're 32 years old. When are you going to get a real job? Stop pretending that serving coffee is a career." "I'm happy with my work," I said simply. "Happy?" My father shook his head. "You know what would make you happy? Financial security. A husband. Children. A future. Instead, you're living in that tiny apartment in the old district, driving that ancient Honda, wearing clearance rack clothes." "My clothes are fine, Dad." "They're an embarrassment." My mother looked me up and down with physical distaste. I was wearing simple black pants and a navy blue blouse, both well-made but understated. "At least try to look presentable for your sister's wedding. People are going to know we're related." "The horror," I murmured into my champagne. "What was that?" "Nothing, Mother." Brandon's parents arrived then, mercifully interrupting the conversation. Michael and Patricia Green were exactly the kind of people my parents wished they were. Genuinely wealthy with the quiet confidence that comes from never having worried about money. Michael owned 3 car dealerships across the state. Patricia sat on the boards of several charities. "Richard, Susan," Patricia air-kissed my mother on both cheeks. "How wonderful to see you again. Isn't this venue just spectacular?" "It's extraordinary," my mother gushed, her entire demeanor changing. "Melissa has such excellent taste." "The Grand Meridian is one of our favorite properties," Michael said, shaking my father's hand. "We've hosted several corporate events here. The service is impeccable." I watched my father's jaw tighten slightly. The Greens could afford to host corporate events here. The Greens belonged. "Emily." Patricia noticed me and came over, warm and genuine in a way my own mother had never been. "So good to see you, dear. Are you all checked in?" "I am, thank you." "Wonderful. We've reserved a table at the restaurant for 8, the hotel's main dining room. Please join us. Family dinner before the big day. She probably can't afford it, my father said loud enough for everyone to hear. The restaurant here has a prix menu that's over $100 per person. The lobby seemed to go very quiet. I'm sure Emily can manage, Patricia began, looking uncomfortable. No, Richard's right. My mother jumped in, clearly relishing the opportunity to explain my failures to Brandon's parents. Emily works at a coffee shop part-time. She's been struggling ever since she dropped out of college to find herself. We've been supporting her for years, really, but at some point tough love is necessary. Every word was a lie, but I didn't correct her. Not yet. I had no idea. Patricia said carefully. Emily, if money is tight, please don't feel obligated. I'll be at dinner, I said. 8. My father laughed. With what money? Emily, stop trying to pretend. It's embarrassing. You can't afford to eat here. You definitely can't afford your room. And we're not covering it. Your mother and I have already spent a fortune on this wedding. Actually, we covered the wedding, Michael said quietly. We were happy to do it. My father's face went red. Well, as we meant the other expenses. Travel, new outfits for the rehearsal dinner, gifts. It adds up. I'm sure, Michael said, diplomatically neutral. Melissa looked like she wanted the marble floor to open up and swallow her. Brandon was staring at his shoes. This was supposed to be a happy family gathering. And my parents had turned it into a public dissection of my supposed failures. The point is, my mother continued, Emily needs to start being realistic about her life choices. She can't keep living in fantasy land, pretending she's successful when she's barely scraping by. Look at her sister. College degree, successful career in marketing, marrying a wonderful man from a good family. That's what success looks like. Mom, Melissa started. Don't interrupt, sweetheart. Someone needs to tell your sister the truth. My mother turned back to me. Emily, you need to wake up. You're not getting any younger. No decent man wants a woman in her 30s with no career, no assets, no prospects. You're going to end up alone, working minimum wage jobs for the rest of your life. I'm not sure this is the time. Patricia tried again. It's exactly the time, my father said firmly. We've coddled Emily for too long. Let her face consequences for once. She wants to stay at this hotel? Fine. Let her figure out how to pay for it herself. She wants to eat at an expensive restaurant? Great. Her credit card, her problem. Maybe a little financial reality will finally teach her something about responsibility. I could have spoken up then. I could have ended it. But something made me wait, made me want to see how far they'd push it. How cruel they'd be willing to get in front of witnesses. You know what I think happened? My mother said, warming to her theme. She was enjoying this now. I think Emily got here early, saw this beautiful hotel and got ideas above her station. Probably thought she'd check in, put it all on credit, and enjoy playing princess for a weekend. Living the high life on borrowed money. Just like she's lived her whole adult life on borrowed time. That's not fair, Melissa said quietly. But no one listened to her. Fair? My father snorted. I'll tell you what's not fair. Working hard your entire life. Building a successful practice. Putting 2 daughters through private school. Paying for college. Only to have one of them throw it all away. Emily had every advantage, and she wasted all of it. I don't think Emily wasted anything, Brandon said suddenly. He'd been quiet until now, but he looked angry. She seems perfectly happy. Happiness doesn't pay bills, my mother snapped. And don't worry, Brandon, we're not asking you to pay for her. You're joining this family, but Emily's failures are not your responsibility. How generous of you, I said. My mother's eyes narrowed. What was that? I said, how generous. You think this is funny? Emily, you're 32 years old with nothing to show for your life. Nothing. No career, no husband, no children, no property, no savings. You serve coffee for a living. You drive a car that's older than some of your coworkers probably are. You live in an apartment I wouldn't house my cleaning lady in. You don't have a cleaning lady, I pointed out. That's not the point. What is the point, Mother? The point is that you're a disappointment. She was almost shouting now, her careful society mask slipping. The point is that we raised you better than this. The point is that your sister is getting married in one of the most exclusive hotels in the city and you show up like some kind of charity case expecting everyone to take care of you. The lobby had gone completely silent. The piano player had stopped. A few hotel guests were staring. Even the front desk staff had paused what they were doing to watch. Melissa was crying quietly. Brandon had his arm around her. Patricia and Michael looked deeply uncomfortable, clearly regretting ever meeting my family. My father stepped closer, looming over me. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to check out of whatever room you conned your way into. You're going to drive back to your apartment tonight. You can come back tomorrow for the wedding ceremony, but then you're leaving. We're not having you embarrass this family any more than you already have. I'm not checking out, I said calmly. Then we're not paying for your room. I never asked you to. Emily, stop pretending you have money, my mother shrieked. Just stop. It's pathetic. We all know you're broke. We all know you're living paycheck to paycheck. We all know that whatever room you booked, you can't actually afford it. I took the last sip of my champagne and set the glass down on the side table. I'm staying in the presidential suite, Mother. It's $1,200 per night. I've booked it for 4 nights. That's $4,800 plus taxes and incidentals. I can afford it. My father actually laughed. The presidential suite. Of course. Why not claim you own the hotel while you're at it? I don't own the hotel, I said. At least you're not that delusional. I smiled. My company does. The silence that followed was deafening. What? My mother said faintly. My company owns the hotel, Mother. Well, 60% of it. The other 40% belongs to an investment group out of Singapore. But Hartfield Hospitality has controlling interest in the Grand Meridian, along with 4 other properties in the state and 12 nationwide. We're in the middle of expanding into international markets. Just closed a deal on 2 properties in Dubai last month, actually. My father's face had gone from red to white. That's impossible. It's very possible. I'm the founder and have been for 8 years. You work at a coffee shop, my mother said. Her voice strangled. We've seen you. We've driven past that place in the old district. Coffee and Pages. We've seen you through the window. I own Coffee and Pages, I said. I opened it 6 years ago. It's been profitable for 4 years running. Nice little side business, and it lets me stay connected to what customers actually want. Market research, basically. But hospitality is the main business. Hotels, resorts, boutique properties. We're a private company. I don't really advertise my involvement. Prefer to stay under the radar. Melissa had stopped crying. She was staring at me with her mouth slightly open. You're lying, my father said flatly. I'm really not. This is insane. You expect us to believe that you who dropped out of college, who has never shown any business sense whatsoever, own a successful hotel company. I expect you to believe whatever you want, Dad. But yes, I dropped out of college at 19 because I had a better opportunity. A friend from high school had inherited some money and wanted to invest in a startup. I had ideas about boutique hospitality, about creating experiences rather than just providing rooms. We started small, bought a struggling bed and breakfast property, renovated it, made it profitable. Used those profits to buy another property, then another, built it up slowly over the years. Who's we? Michael asked. He looked fascinated rather than skeptical. My business partner, James Chen. We met in high school, stayed friends afterward. His grandmother left him $300,000 when she died. He trusted me with it. Best decision either of us ever made. We're worth about 40 million now, combined. 20 million each, give or take, depending on how the market's doing. Patricia made a small sound. My mother looked like she might faint. $20 million. My father said slowly. Give or take. And you never told us? You never asked. You decided what my life was, and you weren't interested in any information that contradicted that narrative. When I tried to tell you about the business early on, you told me to stop lying and get a real job. So, I stopped trying to tell you. But we've driven past that coffee shop. My mother said weakly. We've seen you working there, multiple times. I check in on all my businesses regularly. I own 3 coffee shops, actually. Coffee and Pages was just the first. The other 2 are in different cities. I spend about 1 day a week doing regular shifts, talking to customers, talking to staff. Keeps me grounded. Reminds me what good service looks like. Melissa found her voice. 8 years. You've been running a successful company for 8 years, and you never said anything. I tried, Mel. Remember when I invited everyone to the grand opening of the renovated Riverside Inn? Our second property? That was 7 years ago. Dad said he wasn't going to waste his time at some amateur hotel. Mom said I was embarrassing myself. You were the only one who showed up and you left after 20 minutes because Mom called and said it was time to stop encouraging my delusions. My sister's face crumpled. I remember. I thought you were just managing it. I didn't know you owned it. I tried to tell you. You didn't want to hear it. This is ridiculous, my father said. But he sounded uncertain now. If you're so successful, why do you drive that old Honda? Why do you live in that tiny apartment? I like my Honda. It's reliable. And I don't live in that apartment anymore. I moved 3 years ago. I own a townhouse now about 2 miles from here. But you've never asked where I live, so you wouldn't know that. You've never visited me, never invited me to visit you. You just kept the same mental image of struggling, pathetic Emily, and never updated it with new information. You should have told us, my mother said, tears starting to form. You should have made us understand. I tried for years. You didn't want to understand. You wanted a failure daughter to compare to your success daughter. Make you feel better about yourself somehow. That's not true, Melissa said. But she didn't sound convinced. Before anyone could say anything else, a man in an immaculate suit approached our group. Thomas Reynolds, the hotel's general manager. I'd worked with him for 3 years. Good evening, he said smoothly, professional smile in place. I hope everyone is enjoying their stay at the Grand Meridian. His eyes found me. Miss Williams, I wanted to confirm your usual suite is ready. We've stocked the champagne you prefer and made sure the fresh flowers are in place. The presidential suite, correct? Thank you, Thomas. Yes, that's perfect. Excellent. And regarding your family's rooms and restaurant reservations, shall I bill everything to your company account as usual or would you prefer separate billing? The question hung in the air like smoke. Thomas. I said carefully. These are my parents, Dr. Richard and Susan Williams, and this is my sister Melissa and her fiancé Brandon Green, and his parents, Michael and Patricia Green. Wonderful to meet all of you. Thomas nodded politely. Miss Williams has arranged for the wedding tomorrow to be complimentary, of course. Everything, venue, catering, flowers, all of it. Her gift to the happy couple. And I have everyone's rooms ready. Should I put everything on the company account? My mother made a sound like a deflating balloon. Actually, I said, I think my parents would prefer to handle their own room charges. They've been very insistent about not accepting financial help from me. Thomas looked confused. Of course, if that's what they prefer. However, the room they requested, the Grand Suite, is $1,600 per night. They've booked 3 nights. Should I charge that to their card on file? My father had gone gray. The Grand Suite. I kept my voice neutral. That's more expensive than my presidential suite, Dad. I thought you said I couldn't afford to stay here. This is a misunderstanding, my mother said frantically. We didn't realize the room would be so expensive. We just told them we wanted something nice. Something nicer than what you thought I could afford, I said. Something that would show you were more successful than your disappointment daughter, Emily. Mr. Reynolds, I said, please put my parents' room and all associated charges on my company account. Consider it a wedding gift for Melissa, not for them. Very generous, Miss Williams. And dinner tonight? I have a table reserved for your party at 8:00 the main restaurant. Company account for everyone, I said. Including wine pairings. Excellent. I'll make a note. Please let me know if there's anything else you need. Thomas nodded to the group and walked away, leaving behind a silence so thick you could cut it with a knife. My father opened his mouth, then closed it again. My mother was crying openly now, mascara running down her carefully made-up face. Emily, Patricia said gently, that was extraordinarily generous. It's Melissa's wedding, I said simply. She deserves a perfect day. That's all I care about. Michael was looking at me with something like respect. Hartfield Hospitality. I've heard of your company. You're doing interesting things with boutique properties. There was an article in Hospitality today about your approach to renovation and customer experience. That was a good article. The writer really understood what we're trying to do. I'd love to hear more about it. Perhaps at dinner. I'd be happy to talk business. Brandon cleared his throat. So, the wedding is paid for? Everything. Everything. Venue, food, flowers, music, everything. It's the least I could do for my sister. Melissa burst into fresh tears, but these ones seemed different. She stumbled forward and hugged me fiercely. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I should have listened. I should have believed in you. I should have. It's okay, Mel. Really? You're here now. That's what matters. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. $20 million? You're actually worth $20 million? The business is James and I each own 50%. But yes, approximately. And you're paying for my entire wedding? The venue's mine anyway. Just seems like good synergy. She laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. I can't believe this. I can't believe any of this. Why didn't you tell me? I tried. You remember that lunch we had last year? When I tried to explain what I do, and you said you didn't really have time to hear about the coffee shop business. That's when I gave up. I'm an idiot. You're not an idiot. You just believed what you were told. My parents still hadn't said anything. They stood there frozen looking at me like I was a stranger. Which I suppose I was. They'd never actually known me. We should go freshen up before dinner, Patricia said diplomatically. Emily, thank you again for your generosity. We'll see you all at 8. After they left with Brandon and Melissa, I was alone with my parents in the lobby. The piano player had started playing again. Normal hotel sounds filtered back in. The ding of elevator bells, quiet conversations, luggage wheels on marble. Emily, my father started then stopped. He looked lost. I don't understand, my mother said. How could we not know? How could we not see? You didn't want to see, I said. You wanted me to be a failure. It made you feel better about your own lives. That's not true. It is true, Mom. And the sad thing is I would have shared all of this with you if you'd just been kind. If you'd just asked. If you'd ever treated me like someone whose life mattered. But you didn't. You spent 12 years telling me I was worthless, and now you're surprised that I stopped trying to prove otherwise. We're your parents, my father said. His voice cracked. We deserve to know. You deserved nothing, I said, and I meant it. You earned nothing. You did nothing but criticize and demean and belittle. Why would I share my success with people who've spent over a decade celebrating my supposed failures? We didn't celebrate. Yes, you did. Every time you told someone I was a disappointment. Every time you complained about me to your friends. Every time you compared me unfavorably to Melissa. Every single time you were celebrating the fact that I'd failed because it confirmed your worldview, your assumptions, your superiority. My mother was sobbing. My father looked older than I'd ever seen him. What do we do now? He asked quietly. That's up to you, I said. You can go to your extremely expensive room that I'm paying for, enjoy the wedding tomorrow that I'm paying for, eat the dinner tonight that I'm paying for, and then go back to your lives pretending this never happened. Or you can actually think about your behavior and decide to change. But that's your choice. I'm done trying to earn your approval. I stood up, smoothing down my blouse. Emily, wait, my mother said desperately. Please, let us explain. Explain what Explain why you were willing to humiliate me in front of my sisters-in-laws? I shook my head. There's nothing to explain. You showed me exactly who you are. I just finally started believing you. You're our daughter, my father said. Please, don't shut us out. I'm not shutting you out, Dad. You shut me out years ago. I'm just accepting the situation as it is. I walked toward the elevator, leaving them standing in the lobby. I could hear my mother crying, could feel my father's eyes on my back, but I didn't turn around. At 8 I went down to the restaurant. My parents were already there, sitting stiffly at the large table Thomas had arranged. Melissa and Brandon arrived moments later with his parents. The evening was awkward, but civil. My parents barely spoke. When they did, they were subdued, almost meek. It was the first time in my life I'd ever seen them unsure of themselves. Over appetizers, Michael asked me about the Dubai properties, and I explained our expansion strategy. Patricia wanted to know about the coffee shop concept, and I walked her through the business model. Brandon asked about hotel renovations, and I told him about our sustainable design approach. My parents listened. Just listened. They didn't interrupt, didn't contradict, didn't belittle. They listened like I was a stranger telling them about a life they'd never imagined. Which I suppose I was. The next day Melissa's wedding was perfect. The Grand Meridian's ballroom looked spectacular. The food was exceptional. The music was beautiful. I gave a short toast that made Melissa cry happy tears. My parents gave a toast that was stilted and awkward, clearly written in the wake of the previous evening's revelations. At the reception my mother tried to talk to me. Emily, about yesterday. Not today, Mom. Today is about Melissa. But we need to talk. We need to explain. Maybe later. Not today. She backed off, tears in her eyes again. My father caught me near the bar during the dancing. I'm proud of you, he said quietly. What you've built. It's remarkable. Thank you. I should have said that years ago. Yes. You should have. He flinched like I'd slapped him. Can we start over? Can we try again? I don't know, Dad. That's not something I can answer right now. What can I do to make this right? I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a man who just realized he'd wasted 12 years on a comfortable lie. A man who'd spent a decade feeling superior to a daughter who was in reality far more successful than he'd ever been. A man facing the consequences of his own cruelty. You can start, I said slowly, by asking yourself why you needed me to fail. Why it was so important to you that I be a disappointment. Why you couldn't just be happy for me or proud of me or even just civil to me. Figure that out and maybe we can talk. I walked away leaving him standing by the bar. 3 months later my mother sent me a letter. A real letter. Handwritten on nice stationery. It was 12 pages long. She talked about her own mother who'd been critical and cold. He talked about her fears of never being good enough. She talked about how she'd projected all of that onto me. How she'd needed me to be struggling so she could feel successful by comparison. She apologized. Really apologized. Not the fake kind where someone says sorry but means sorry you're upset. She took responsibility. She asked if we could try to rebuild our relationship slowly with no expectations. My father sent his own letter a week later. Shorter, more blunt. He admitted he'd been jealous. Jealous that I'd built something bigger than his dental practice. Jealous that I'd done it so young. Jealous that I'd made it look easy. He said he'd spent years resenting me for succeeding where he'd only done adequately. And he'd tried to cut me down to size to make himself feel better. He also apologized. He also asked for a chance to start over. I didn't respond immediately. I let myself sit with their letters for a few weeks thinking about what I wanted. Thinking about whether forgiveness was something I was capable of offering. Eventually I invited them to lunch. Not at one of my hotels. Just at a quiet restaurant downtown. We talked. Really talked maybe for the first time in my adult life. They asked questions about the business. About my life. About my plans. They listened to the answers. They didn't criticize or correct or belittle. It wasn't perfect. Probably never would be. But it was a start. Melissa and I grew closer. She felt terrible about the years she'd spent believing our parents' version of my life. And she was determined to make up for it. She became one of my biggest supporters actually. Started telling her friends about her sister the CEO. Started attending company events. Started being the sister she should have been all along. As for my parents, we're working on it. Fully. There are still moments when they slip back into old patterns. Still comments that sting. Still assumptions that hurt. But they catch themselves now. They apologize. They try. I'm not sure we'll ever have a normal parent-child relationship. Too much damage. Too many years of pain. But we have something. Some kind of relationship that acknowledges the past while trying to build something better for the future. And honestly, that's enough. I don't need them to be perfect. I just need them to try. But I'll never forget standing in that hotel lobby, watching their faces as they realized everything they'd believed about me was wrong. Watching them understand that their disappointment daughter was more successful than they'd ever imagined. Watching them face the consequences of 12 years of cruelty and contempt. That moment changed everything. Not just for my family relationships, but for me. It was the moment I finally stopped carrying the weight of their expectations. Stopped trying to prove myself to people who'd never wanted to see the truth. The Gramercy Indian is still one of my favorite properties. Sometimes I stay in the presidential suite just because I can, ordering room service and watching the city lights and remembering that night. Remembering the look on my father's face when the manager called me Miss Williams and asked about my usual suite. Remembering that sometimes the best revenge is simply being yourself and letting other people face the reality they tried so hard to deny.